But we joined now in studio by Charles Walters. He recently took up the reins as Chief Executive of Invicta Holdings after serving as CEO of BMG for 8 years. Charles is in studio with me now to discuss the company's strategy going forward. Good to have you with us, Charles.
Thank you, Guru.
Before we get into talks of strategy, I understand you're celebrating tonight. You're having a sorori, 40 years.
We are indeed.
And not your age, by the way.
Not my age, a little older than that, unfortunately. But 40 years BMG. It was founded as a single bearing shop called Bearing Man in 1974. Today it's a 4 billion rand, 150 branch operation running nationally. We have 60 of our international suppliers have come out to celebrate with us. Long-serving suppliers, over 25 years service with us. So we're delighted. We've had 2,000 customers at our BMG Expo today. It's a celebration of a proud South African story tonight.
And a story that you've been part of for the last 8 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Indeed. The founder, Greg Toole, ran the business for the first 30 years, and it reached the turnover level of $1 billion in 2004. There was Greg fell ill, and then there was about an 18-month period. I came in, and in the last 8 years, we've managed to get it up to 4 billion.
Getting it up to 4 billion, interesting moves, no doubt. But last we spoke to the former chief executive, Arnold Goldstone. He really highlighted the impact of the labour unrest that we had in South Africa and how that impacted on your numbers. Now that you've taken up the role in the hot seat, how are you hoping to defend against this? Are you changing relations with your union members?
Okay, first of all, we're in a process because we've announced that Byron Nichols will join us on the 1st of November to take over from me as CEO of BMG. I'm Deputy CEO of Invicta and in a transition to the CEO role, which I'll probably take up full-time next year once Byron has settled in. As far as the markets are concerned, yes, we've had a tough run with all the strikes. We serve the mining industry, and then we had the metal workers strike. August was still constrained as a result of backlogs, but we are seeing things improve somewhat in September, and we hope that the second half will be a lot better.
How difficult is it? Today we just had the MPC keeping interest rates steady. We had inflation numbers out recently. So obviously it's a difficult one to ride, and as the face of the company, you need to remain confident.
We do need to remain confident, and we have said and we continue to invest in our business. We continue to make some acquisitions, invest in our logistics capabilities. So we're very positive on the long term that we need to provide a resource to support our technical resource and logistics competence to support our African expansion strategies. But it is tough out there in South Africa at the moment. There's not a lot of certainty, and certainly from a demand macroeconomic point of view, our mining industry, metals are in a depressed part of the cycle. So we hope that with the improving world economic situation that we see, that we'll start to see a pickup next year.
You mentioned Africa. Where in particular are you looking on the continent?
We've been operating in Africa with branches for over 15 years. But we've opened about 3 or 4 branches in the last few years. Mozambique has been a particular expansionary focus. We recently opened in Mwanza in Tanzania, and we have a number of other branches planned. So we hope to get the BMG revenue up to 20% in Africa out of the total in the next 3 or 4 years.
Business-friendly environment in those markets?
Not always. Quite tough. A lot of the time, customers who know us from here, engineers working up on the mines over there, asking us to come. So there is a demand pool for the BMG product and service offering, but it is not always easy. The legal complexities, the currency issues, the logistics issues. It is challenging, but we've decided we've got to get there and be there for the long term.
You mentioned that Byron Nichols will take over your position at BMG.
Indeed.
I must share a story with you. He was here for results, and Alec Hogg, my co-anchor on Power Lunch, was very disappointed that he didn't tell us he was leaving. But maybe if you can allude us as to when talks officially started and why you identified him as the appropriate candidate to take after you.
We announced that we would start the succession process about a year ago, November last year. And through a professional search program, we identified some candidates, and Byron was on the shortlist. He's a very strong candidate. He came flying through. So we were in negotiations for a couple of months, and we were delighted to sign him up, but obviously then he wanted to see the results of ARB out and done professionally, which he has now done, and in handover at ARB he'll join us on the 1st of November. So we're delighted. He's a really competent leader, very sharp, very energetic, and I couldn't wish for a more worthy successor.
Ah, wow. I hope someone says that about me one day. But nonetheless, you're passing on the baton on to Byron. Arnold's passing it on to you. Is it too early to talk about strategy and the direction you want to take for Invicta as a whole?
No, not really, because it's not my strategy alone. We've been talking about it for some time, that Invicta wishes to internationalize further. We are currently deriving 22% of our revenue from global markets. Half of that is Africa, half of that is Asia, through the Kianan acquisition. And we want to get that number up to 50% of revenue by the year 2020. So we have a team that sat together, a really strong, competent Invicta management team, and we put a strategy together that on how we'll do that, and it will need to be some fairly sizable acquisitions in the future.
How much more capital will you need to do that?
It'll depend on exact nature of each transaction, so we're going to have to take it deal for deal and look at the funding requirements depending on which deal comes first.
Maybe a rights issue?
We can't rule that out. We can't rule out an international listing, and we'll look at all the options for sure.